The VC project.
Whatever it is, however they made it, they don't have that issue. I was telling him, so the mic that I use is a Shure SM7B. It's it's what Rogan uses, what a lot of guys use, right? And the biggest complaint that those folks have is that they have to bump it, right? They have to increase the volume somehow, some way, shape, or form. A lot of guys will do.
That's what Craig was talking about yesterday.
A little Cloud Lifter, right? Is a name. It's a brand name, right? But does the same thing. You plug in an XLR, it bumps it up 20 dB. It's out. Like, it's a dumb box. It's all it does. They came out with a brand new one called an SM7DB that eliminates the need for that box. They just released it like in October, I think. And I just got a set.
So basically, you're saying I need to yell at Cassie for not sending me those.
Probably.
Thank you, Cassie, for the gear. We'll keep it at that.
And thank you for continually canceling on all of us.
I was mentioning that she cancels on Tim pretty regularly.
Oh, dude,
I don't feel as bad.
And she knows she's horrible, right? It is a common joke. And I'm
going to air this too.
I said fine.
Yeah,
I've made it to her personally. Like, I've sent her a text when she will text me and go, "Oh, hey, I can't make it today because of X, Y, Z." And I'm like, you are the worst.
But she is the first to hook us up when I call her and ask for some gear.
Amen. 100%. Eventually.
So, Tim Albright, AV Nation, welcome, sir.
Thank you. You have a podcast.
I have a podcast.
I am so proud of you.
How excited are you?
Can I stop now?
No. So you know that if I had a mentor in the world of podcasting, it would be Tim.
You've got so many other people you can choose on that one.
Not for podcasts.
I can think of 3 or 4 at least.
You were ahead of the curve, though. I look back to 2015 is when I started to listen to podcasts. Mm-hmm. In 2016, it became a daily routine for me.
Yep.
You're 5 years before that. 2011, correct?
2011, yeah. July of 2011.
And see, I had no idea those even existed then.
No.
And then not only are you...
And they're still archived out there, right? You found all of them.
What's that?
Did you find most of those? They're out there.
I didn't go that far back to listen.
Yeah, there are very few people. There's a guy that works for AMX, and yes, that's still a company. That when he found us in, like, I don't know, 14 or 15, he actually went back and listened to all of them. And we were at like episode, I don't know, 200 or 300 at that point. And I'm like, good Lord, dude. Good for you. I wouldn't do that.
What episode are you on now? I mean, you do so many different shows.
630, 640?
I want to say it was 643. Don't quote me on that.
Not Rogan territory, but
no.
Into the thousands.
And not, so you got Rogan. My mentor, who I've never met, is a guy by the name of Leo Laporte. And AV Week is very generically based off of his podcast, his first podcast, which was called This Week in Tech. Still is, right? And he's in the thousands because he started in 2005, 2006. So he's pushing on 20 years now.
It's incredible. And then
I'm happy to be at 12.
And you had the background in radio.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. What did that look like in the St. Louis area? What type of radio were you in? What were you doing?
My first job in radio was with a little station called KMOX. And KMOX is, they call it the 50,000 blowtorch or red hot watt CBS radio station in St. Louis. We were the home of the Cardinals. We were the home of the Blues. We were the flagship of the Cardinals radio network, and got to work with a lot of amazing people.
What years would this have been?
This was 99 through 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that back when did the Blues have some good teams then?
They did, right? This is the era of Quenneville.
Okay.
Right. And this was the era of when McGuire had the run.
Right. I forgot
when
about
he
that.
hit his 500th, right? Jack was still around, Jack Buck. I got to work with Jack, got to know Jack very well.
And this is the peak of radio times,
100%.
too, where everybody is getting their, sports info, and they're turning to the radio for that.
Yeah. I mean, podcasting, first of all, podcasting wasn't a thing yet, right? Internet audio wasn't a thing yet. I mean, MP3s was just coming out, and this was like Napster and BearShare and LimeWire and all those, where audio was being freely distributed, right? Before the FCC and before the lawsuits against Napster. This predates iTunes, right? So it was still, radio is still the predominant medium, and then shortly after 9/11, I left there and went to work for a what we call it adult contemporary or AAA, music station, right? I was in my mid 20s, late 20s, and I'm like, well, screw this whole, the world's going to end crap. I'm going to go have some fun before the world comes crashing down, and got to, meet his buddy, Dave Matthews, and a bunch of other folks. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, you've got quite the vast background when it comes to even radio.
You
And
can
that's
call it schizophrenic if you want.
well,
That's fine.
but that's the thing too, is you didn't go straight out of radio into podcasting necessarily.
Oh, Lord, no.
No, because Tim and I first met. No.
Dark Train.
Hold on. No. Okay, you're right. We met on the train randomly. I was teaching at Columbia College in Chicago.
So like 05, 06?
No, this is 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. Yeah. So I was teaching at Columbia in Chicago, and I was taking the train back from Chicago to Bloomington. He was taking the train from Chicago to St. Louis back home. And I was sitting in business class by myself working on something, and I'd watched some of his podcasts, and I'm like, man, that voice is really familiar. And I'm kind of looking through the chair. I think that's Tim Albright. So I just came around the corner like, Tim, Jeremy Caldera, and we kind of knew of each other a little bit, right? But we just never really met. So kind of hung out on the train, talked that night. I think Neto was there.
No, my buddy Michael Drainer.
It was Mike. Yeah, Drainer.
He was a rep at the time.
He was Sennheiser then.
He was.
Yeah. So, Mike, you and Mike were there. You were coming back from something, I don't know. And then next thing I know, I get an invite to be on his podcast. Yeah. And then that became a pretty regular thing. I've been on quite a bit. I don't even know how many times I've been on his podcast now. So,
well, Pat could probably tell you. Since he's
probably
I don't have that
all
number
of them.
yet. I'm throwing out way too many numbers that are not reliable. I'm going to cut those off now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that went back quite a ways. But even then, I guess you were podcasting. So talk to me about what did you do between the radio and that? Because we became even better friends when we ended up working on a job together, which was the Job from Hell.
And the Job from Hell.
And we still talk about that, and it always will be. 1 Wall Street was the original address. They moved to the American Express Tower across the street from Ground Zero in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
At least you're getting good food in between the work hours in New York.
There was really good
food.
The food vendors and the carts and everything.
Oh, yeah.
We had that apartment there.
It makes it all better.
There was that pizza joint down the
First
street.
time I ever had Shake Shack.
Oh.
Was that job.
Yes, and I remember that job because I got a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke down in the cafeteria thing on the level of that building because I didn't want to walk out, and it was $57.
Jeez.
I about had a heart attack. Like, there's my entire per diem for the next 2 days is
Welcome
gone.
to New York.
Like, welcome to New York.
Well, and I recently took the kids and my wife to New York. I had a thing to do there. And it was
more enjoyable than when they visited you when we were on that project.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And we went to Ground Zero, went to the museum there, and I relayed this story, which I don't know that I will ever forget this story. Jeremy and I are in the boardroom of this facility, and all of a sudden, like the street shuts down, and then these guys in black, all in black,
show up
with sniper rifles right outside
Big
of our
sniper
20th
rifles.
story window.
Yeah.
And we're like, what the F? Well, here comes the Pope in his little Pope mobile because he was visiting grounds, because he was in town for the UN, whatever.
You guys didn't know he was in town?
No.
No, we literally were living in this boardroom for days.
Yeah, 100%. But these sniper rifles, like, were literally outside the window. So everything stops, right? Everybody goes to the window and watch the little Pope mobile come down. He popes his little Pope mobile thing out, and he walks to the Ground Zero to the fountains. I guess he went into the museum.
We watched the whole thing go down, like from our.
You've seen the Pope multiple times.
Yes, I was much closer last month than I was that
about
time.
5 feet from the vehicle a couple months ago.
Well, no, this was thousands of feet, I guess.
His Swiss Guard are much less scary than the United States Secret Service. I will say that. The guns are much smaller.
Is it the outfits?
It might be the outfits,
well, the outfits too. Yeah.
Well, they dress in black with the guys that are there. But yeah, no, that job was wow. So Tim worked for
was good
third-party company that we had hired to do programming.
Yeah.
And Tim was it was Crestron programmer at the time. There was a whole Crestron system. We were implementing Crestron and QSys across the board. And the job just couldn't have been any more of a nightmare. Like, everything that could have went wrong.
Several times.
I'm working on the DSP code. He's working on the Crestron code. And we're together trying to get these automatic camera switching to work. Because this is before the days of like AI and all this stuff. So if you did automatic camera switching and moving and automated production switching, it we've had people ask for that. We just actually got a call about that last week. You got all this fancy stuff with 1Beyond and Seer Vision and all these companies now, but this is before that stuff really existed.
Yeah,
you had to write it by hand. And so him and I are trying to design the triggering system with code on how to make these cameras move. It ended up working out pretty well, but
eventually.
So when you were at Ground Zero, did you end up going up in the Freedom Tower too?
We did not do that. It was, for us, it was more interesting to go through the museum, right? And excuse me, we only had like a day or two to do actual touristy stuff, and so both all four of us, we were more focused on the actual museum part.
And the only reason I asked that, Jeremy and I have talked about that, the elevator ride to the top is one of the coolest audiovisual experiences I've had in my entire life.
In my life. It is in my top 5 of all time.
It's an immersive video wall, the entire elevator. And as you start at the ground floor, what are you in New York in like the 1600s?
Yeah.
And there's animation as you're going up the tower from the 1600s through 9/11.
You watch the city being built.
Oh, that's cool.
And you see the ticker in the upper right of but it looks like Willy Wonka in the glass elevator
incredible.
because the whole elevator is screens like
then
LED.
You get to 2023 and the doors open up and you're at the top. It's one of the coolest experiences.
But then even going down, like I had to brace myself in the elevator because when you go down, it's like the same thing except the elevator like swings out from the building like you're flying.
Oh,
definitely like Willy Wonka style, and you're like moving around Manhattan and seeing everything like it's a giant window, and it's so disconcerting. You're just there, like, and I know I'm in an elevator shaft going down. I'm not flying, but your mind is like, it's unbelievable how cool it is. And then you fly into the building, and then it opens up, and you're in the museum.
Okay,
right downstairs. So that alone, I tell everybody, you have to check that out.
I will have to do that next time,
especially if you're a tech junkie. I mean, it's like when I go to Disney World, I'm checking out all the cool projection mapping and tech stuff at all the rides. My kids just want to go on the stupid ride, and I'm looking at all the behind the scenes stuff as much as I can. Same thing there. If you're a tech person at all, that's one of the top experiences of all time. We fortunately, I got to do that. Actually, right after that project had finished, I went back and stayed at a corporate apartment and did the whole Times Square for New Year's Eve thing. And
how was that?
That was miserable.
I was going to say, it looks terrible.
No,
it was the worst thing ever. So I was with my ex-wife, and we were just trying to take a weekend away. And I said, let's just go to New York. One of the most expensive things in New York is housing. We had a corporate house like 2 blocks from Ground Zero. No one's there. So we went, stayed there. I talked to my buddies that worked AV at Google and hooked us up with some like cool spots in Times Square and everything. But the people, this is so disgusting. So you go, I mean, there's it's the only time I've ever been around that many people at one time. You go to this thing, you find out you have to get there at like 2:00 in the afternoon.
How's the bathroom?
I'm already out.
The bathroom situation.
This is the disgusting part that I'm going to tell you. You have to get there at 2:00 in the afternoon. There's no alcohol in Times Square. Okay. So if you bring it, you got to sneak it in. And if you leave to go to the bathroom, you're out.
So time out for a second. You mean all those people that we see?
Yes.
Are sober?
Sober. or
absolutely shocking.
I would say most of them are sober because, okay, so here we are. We maneuver our way up, and we're in the great spot. We prepped. We bought these little chairs that like expanded out. We had games loaded on the phone. We had a little bit of bottled water because we knew we were just going to sip water. And we're getting there at 2:30 in the afternoon, and there's thousands of people already there. Okay, and they're blocking off the sections.
Yeah. And
I know you can't leave. You leave, you're gone. So like, went to the bathroom before. Here's these guys next to us. They're like, yeah, this is our 7th New Year's in New York, and they are chugging beers. Okay, they brought it in their backpacks, just chugging beers. I'm like, how are they going to do this? I go, hey guys, how are you chugging these beers? You're not going to be able to like hold it for that long. He's like, no, man, depends.
Oh,
gross. And I was like, okay, I'm out. There's no way I'm down for that. And these guys are just, they pretty much just go freely, and they just stay there all night. Now, we lucked out because when we were there, it was maybe 55, 56 degrees. Yeah. There's New York's there's New Year's brutal. When it's, 10 degrees and snowing. I'm just thinking to myself, oh, gross. Like, how are these people? And then I'm thinking of the millions of people that are there, and I'm like, and then you leave to try and get on the get on the train to go back down to Lower Manhattan. It's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. So I can tell you honestly, every trip I've ever taken to New York, personal and professional, has been an utter nightmare. Like I don't ever want to go back because I feel like the city is jinxed to me. I just, because every time I go, it's never a great experience. I went twice with my ex-wife, who's now my ex-wife. I went 3 times for work. Both were miserable jobs to work at. My first experience with LED walls, though, was at that job.
Yeah. That was part of the project that actually went well.
Yeah, those actually went in very smoothly, which was very nice, especially for being on motorized mounts. But I remember that CIO was one of the scariest people I'd ever met in my life. Were you there when he came in that once? He gets there and he pulls up on his yacht in the Hudson River, because you can see the Statue of Liberty. Everybody's in suits and you're like doing this thing. And this guy's walking through and he's yelling at people. And then he has a meeting at like Bank of America or something. So then he goes back down to his yacht, gets on his helicopter that's on the back of the yacht, and then like flies over to Bank of America to have a meeting. And then he flies back and then he leaves for the day and everybody's calm again.
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
Yeah, that guy is in
I want to meet that guy.
Top 5 people I'm scared of that I've ever met. So I would want to be friends with him just because I'd want him to pay for my partying, but that's about it.
We got to get on to New York City here. Let's go to 2015.
Okay.
When you decide to go off on your own, correct?
Yeah.
Is that when? Talk a little bit about that. The fear, was there fear in there? Doubt?
100%, dude. Yeah. I have a wife and 2 kids, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
And but it was one of those weird moments where you go, okay, this is, you can either take a swing at this, right, to use a baseball analogy, or you just go sit down, right? And we took a swing. And, there were a fair number of misses, but there were enough hits that, we just kept doing it.
Were there any times in there where you thought, I'm going to bail on this and
100%? There was 1,000 times. Right?
So and this is the creation of AV Nation.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So were the 3 of you together doing this out the gate?
No.
It was just you at the time.
So let me back up a little bit. When in July of 2011, Google Meet, the precursor to Google Meet, right? Google Hangouts had just come out, and there was a bunch of us that were different parts of the internet, and I ended up on a hangout with Bradford Ben, who worked at the time for Harman, and Rich Fregosa, who is a fantastic programmer out of the East Bay in San Francisco. And we had never met. Like, we had never, literally, it was a bunch of us chatting on Google Plus, right? That social media platform. And like, let's just check this thing out and see what plays. So it was the 3 of us, right? And we were chatting and I was asking questions and they were answering me because they were still a lot smarter than me. And something clicks in the back of my brain going, I could record this. Like, this is actually quite good. Right. Not because I think I'm good. I just, these guys are freaking awesome. And I was teaching audio production at the time for the college that I worked at. And I'm like, I know enough engineering to be dangerous, right? I am not Caldera level engineering, but I know enough to plug this Gazenta into that Gazauta. And I'm like, I can record this. So one thing led to another, and I'm like, well, we're all on Twitter at the time, and I'm like, I want to do this. Who wants to be on a podcast? And sure as heck, we had 2 people raise their hand, and then I pulled in my buddy Michael and forced him into it on the first one. And that was a Friday at the end of July, and I just never stopped doing it. And so every Friday since then, I have recorded AV Week. And a number of people came along because they saw value there. They saw, the community being built around it. One was Bradford. One was another buddy of ours, Matt Scott, out of London, Ontario.
Best hair in AV.
Not anymore.
No?
No.
Who?
Me.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. You do have a fantastic.
I'm not going to argue it.
Yeah.
And he's losing his.
Ooh.
So
I can't wait till his birthday message when I send it tomorrow.
But so those guys started jumping on and doing various things. George Tucker, a buddy of mine out of Yonkers, New York. And it just kind of snowballed, and I didn't know enough to say no to anybody. So they're like, oh, hey, we should start this podcast. Oh, hey, sure, let's see what happens, right? And EdTech, which is one that focuses on the higher ed space, that's still going, right? Steve Greenblatt out of Control Concepts.
Yeah, he's got his control. That's
he's
great.
got a Control and Automation podcast. That one's still going. So we've had a number of oh, this sounds like a good idea. We'll do it for a year. Nothing, it'll fizzle out. No big deal. And then we'll go to another one.
Steve Greenblatt, one of the greatest control minds I've ever met.
Absolutely.
Guy's great. His wife is a riot. We love Jerry.
So something that who's going to hear this?
I mean, we have like 2 listeners,
okay,
so it's fine.
So here's a quick story about Steve. Steve is the reason that there is an independent programming part of Crestron. Now, he will tell you he's not, but he is.
He may listen to this, but that's fine.
So Steve, this is the 90s, right? Steve worked for Crestron. He was one of their top trainers. He went around the world training people on how to program Crestron. He leaves Crestron and starts doing independent programming for various dealers. At the time, that was against
like a big no-no.
The rules of engagement from Crestron. Like, you couldn't do that. That was against their rules. They would pull your dealership for doing that. And so he had some workarounds, this, that, and the other. And by the end of the 90s, Randy Klein's like, well, there's enough of these yahoos that are going out on their own, and they just want to program. So why don't we start this? And that's where Masters came from, right? So I will point to Steve and go, Steve is the reason that there's a CAPE program, and Steve is the reason that there's a Masters.
He's also probably the nicest, most humble guy I've ever met. He is the yin and yang between him and his wife. They are very, very opposite.
Yes.
He's very calm, very laid back. I remember.
Unless you're in Amsterdam.
Do you remember Amsterdam? I was just going to ask you that. We're in Amsterdam, and fabulous seafood restaurant.
Unbelievable.
It was a seafood place we went to, right?
If I remember correctly.
No, it wasn't. It was a steak place. But anyway,
sounds like you hit a little bakery beforehand.
We did.
Well, and here's
one or two.
But he and I did have seafood with Mitch Klein.
We did, yes.
At the Chinese joint on the barge.
Yes, yeah. But okay. So the next night or the night before, we end up at this fabulous steak restaurant in Amsterdam, and I will never forget this. This random guy, like, body checks Steve's wife.
Yeah.
Like,
on purpose or just like
we think it was on purpose.
100% on purpose.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
She, love her to death, is very vocal, and she's like, "Excuse you," kind of one of these things. And
this is a local.
Local.
Oh boy.
So the local turns around and gets in her face, and they are yelling at each other.
Perfect.
And here comes Chuck, who just kind of weasels his way and
our Chuck
steps in between them.
Oh yeah.
And goes to push the two of them away, and turns around to this guy. And I was like, whoa, shit's about to get real now.
And there goes our perfect podcasting
no,
on
it's
the PG level.
So this is about to go down. Tim and Matt Scott are there. And Tim's like, yeah, we're out. Taxi.
So to add to that story, I had with me my 13-and-a-half-year-old producer, who's not really 13 and a half, but he looks 13 and a half, Mitchell, who had never been out of the country before.
He's very this was
probably hasn't left since.
Oh
no, he is a seasoned traveler at this point.
Yes,
but this was his first experience. So not only did we inadvertently walk him through the red light district of Amsterdam, but we about get his butt kicked by some local Dutch people.
So we're there, and they bail. We're all hanging out. These guys are going at it. This guy calls the cops. All right, cops show up. 2 of the hottest women police officers I've ever seen in my life get out of this little clown car with sirens on it, little lights and sirens. Okay? To the point where you would think, am I at a bachelor party? Is this about to go wrong? Is this going to break bad? Like, what's happening? All right. So, okay. And I'm next to Steve, and Steve is just cool as a cat, just sitting there, just watching. And I can tell he's getting tense because Jerry's just with Chuck and this guy are going at it. The cops, I'm trying to just crack a smile from Steve, and I just lean over very quietly and I go, "Hey, Steve, at least they got handcuffs." I still don't get a crack. I don't get a smile. I don't get a crack. I don't get anything. Anyways, the cops end up siding with us. The guy finds out we're Americans, starts screaming at us even more. I think the cops ended up arresting this guy. And he's like, and the cops like, "You guys just get out of here." We're like, "Oh, wait." And then we just bailed as fast as we could. But, oh man, that night I'll never forget that. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But cool as a cat, Steve, man. He kept his composure and kept it together. But great dude. And now he's still doing control.
Absolutely.
On the podcast.
And he's doing that. And so the interesting thing about what Steve does on the control concept side on his actual day job is they have transitioned from, they still do independent programming, but that's not really, that's still part of their business. But what they're doing now is they're writing modules and interconnects between various manufacturers, right? So they're they may have been the first QSYS, independent programming houses, where they're creating these modules for, you want to connect Crestron to QSYS. Great, awesome. Well, here's this great module. Well, Steve wrote that.
We've already figured it out.
Exactly.
Here you go.
Right.
Yeah. Or building the modules for the manufacturers, which is nice too.
Yes.
And so, yeah, he's got a great business going on there. So who else is part of the AV Nation now? Now you guys have been acquired by CTI.
Yep. 2021 that happened.
2021. Yeah.
I was the first to call out Tim and be like, okay, the autonomy better stay here because now you're working for my competitor.
Well, you can't. I mean, that's the American dream, though. You take a risk, start something on your own, sell it off to somebody, and then still stay in the business and do what you love.
It's weird.
That is literally, that's the American
Kinda
dream.
your own boss, but not your own boss anymore. It's a weird
perfect.
thing.
Like that's what people.
I mean, I still have somebody that if he texts, I have to text him back. So.
Yes.
And that's all from taking a risk. It's a big risk, but it stems from that.
Yeah, it is.
Still have, I would say, you still have the large, conglomerate of people that are contributing to what is AV Nation.
100%.
And it's still there. And many of the people that we know, and just so many different varieties of podcasts and everything else going on. What else are you guys involved in? What else are you guys doing that is, because I know you're getting involved with the trade shows and doing that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about how you got kind of morphed into that.
So first I'll touch on the people. Erin May Moran, who is she's actually, speaking of programming, she's an incredibly accomplished programmer in her own right. Works for Johns Hopkins University, right? She's also heavily involved in HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance or Association. I get it wrong, and Joe Way can yell at me.
I would say I'll text Joe and find out the exact thing else I can never remember.
Don't cut that out. I make a joke about
we don't cut anything.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I still love you, Cassie. But she has taken over as our host for our higher ed podcast, right? Because she's in it, right? I'm not anymore. When I started it, I was a tech manager. And so that makes a whole lot of sense. That we have two fantastic women who host our Women in AV podcast, Erica Carroll, and Jennifer Goodyear. Two fantastic women in the AV industry they're doing that thing, right? And so that's kind of the focus. Trade shows, it's like this. It's if you are an end user in any way, shape, or form, and you can't go to a show, we want to go for you, right? So we're headed over to Barcelona for ISE because it's the biggest trade show in the world, and it is the one that more new AV products will be announced that week than any other time during the year.
And you're going to bring those to people because I'm not going this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been fortunate to go in years past, so I'm just not going to go this year. So I'll be very in tune with what you guys are doing because I want to see what's being released.
Yeah. So you've got that. Enterprise Connect is another show that I kind of knew about, but not really up until about 4 or 5 years ago. And you walk on the show floor of Enterprise Connect, and you're like, okay, there's this ginormous booth from Ring Central. Well, that doesn't speak to me. I mean, I know what Ring Central is, but then you keep walking and you go deeper, and there is, Shure has a booth, Sennheiser has a booth, Biamp has a booth, Zoom has a ginormous.
Oh, Enterprise Connect, huh?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So
where's this at?
Orlando.
Okay.
Orlando in April or March, I forget. But again, it's another show where IT managers will go to, right, and CIOs and CTOs, and they'll go and go, okay, not only can I talk about my UC solutions, but I can also talk about my conference solutions, because the Shure will have some version of whatever they're showing for the MX line, right, the ceiling microphone stuff. So that's a huge one. NAB is increasingly becoming important, and it's one 20 years ago I would have argued against, right?
I get asked regularly if I'm going to NAB by our reps, and I'm like, why would I go to that?
You say that
because your clients are making
they are
production studios.
Yeah, I know they are, and we're designing more production studios now, so I'm getting more involved with that too. So,
and I'll tell you, here's an interesting sidebar: Ross Video, okay, and Ross Video makes really nice video switchers, okay. You walk into a TV station or a high-end production studio.
We went to Set Insurance Company a couple weeks ago, not far from here, and their production booth's all Ross.
Okay.
Yep.
They're getting into the AV space, right? So they're leveraging their video expertise and bringing that into the installed audio video space. Well, they're going to be at NAB, not only showing their switching, their video switching stuff, but also their AV stuff, right? And they'll be at Infocom too.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this interconnect, right? Our corporate overlord is CTI. They're doing a production studio for a client, and they're putting in a XR or virtual production, whatever you want to call it, but it's the video walls, right? With the ability to shoot against them, right?
Well, very cool.
Like they're doing you talk about that in the movies. I read a whole thing about
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Well, that's direct view LED. Okay, so it's but it's direct view LED in a production environment. So that's NAB.
The new green screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's this weird like crossing of the streams happening.
That's stepping ahead, and it seems like you're always five years ahead of the rest of the world. What are we going to look at from now, 2028, and say, oh, that makes sense? What do you see in the industry that nobody has maybe thought of yet or hasn't really conceptualized that you see becoming more mainstream in the next 5 to 10 years?
This is not going to be popular with a couple of my dear friends and sponsors.
Ooh, this is what I'd like to hear.
See, here we go.
The black boxes are going away. The boxes that you and I, Jeremy, have put in for freaking 20 years, right? That have an 8x8 matrix or a 24x24 matrix, they will eventually go away. It may not be 5 years, it may be 8. But the push to AV over IP, even localized AV over IP, the black boxes, the switchers right now, right? They take up so much energy, and they are not energy efficient. And you have more colleges and universities and corporate, Fortune 500, looking at the environmental impact of everything they put in. That those black boxes are going to be seen as energy sinks and money sinks. And if I can take, I don't know, a laptop and auto-magically convert that video source into ones and zeros straight out of the RJ45, and I can pick it up from a projector or a video wall, why the heck not?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the technology was never there to do what the things are that we can do now, and it's only going to improve and get better. The consumer market's going to drive a lot of this whole.
Well, the consumer market is wireless now anyway.
Yes, it is, and it's going to drive this whole simplicity of, okay, we've been putting in complex control systems for decades that control all this other stuff, big Crestron systems. I remember I put one in my first house, totally pimped it out with Crestron. I was so proud of it. I programmed some of it myself, got a little help from guys like Tim when I couldn't figure it out. But man, I had fireplace, hot tub, pool, lights, sound system, the whole thing. And it took me days to install it all and pull the wire and program it and test it and debug it. And inevitably, every time I went out of town, my ex-wife would call me that nothing worked in the house and couldn't turn the TV on. Or you press the power button on the TV and the oven turns on or whatever, right? But I think, and then I move out of that house. I go to the next house and I get nothing. I said, I'm going to be anti-technology because I live in a world of technology. So we're going to dial it back a little bit. Fast forward about 5 years from that. And then I'm in another house and I buy an Apple TV and I plug it in and it says, welcome. We see you've got this model of TV. Do you want us to turn that on and off with the remote? So yes. Oh, we see you have this model of home theater receiver. You want us to control the volume with this? Yes. Fantastic. Hang on a minute. Click, 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 click. Boom, it's set up. Now I've got a remote with one button on it. The whole customization is there. We talked about this on another podcast. Now we're adding lights and microwaves and ovens and all, and the simplicity is there. So this custom, I always used to get worried about the Steves and the world and the custom guys because I feel like some of that stuff, it's not really going to go away. But to some extent, it's going to be simplified. Mm-hmm. There's going to be smarts behind it all. And like you said, those black boxes are going away because everything's going to go to the network.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely everything's going to go to the network.
So I use this analogy a lot. And because I come from the world of media, this is where my brain goes to. The powers that be have been talking about the death of newspapers for years, right? And there's a number of newspapers who have stopped printing physical newspapers, right? I think the Seattle Times, whatever it is, they were one of the biggest first ones, right? But newspapers aren't going to go away. Magazines aren't going to go away. They will be less, and they will become more bespoke. And people who really, really want that tactile feel of a New York Times in their hand, they will pay more for that experience. But they will still physically be there in some way, shape, or form. Same thing with the bespoke control guys and gals, right? There is going to be a place for them in the world. There will be fewer of them, and the competition will be more fierce. But the simplicity, that's where that's going to be. But there's got to be people behind that too. So there's still jobs. It's just depending on how you want to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always laugh when I see people who get a newspaper, just like I laugh at my mom when I see, because for some reason her cable bill comes to my emails. But
that's weird.
I laugh because, number one, she has cable, and number two, she has a home phone, which are two things that are mind-boggling to me. And I'm 42 years old. This is stuff I grew up with. But I'm trying to embrace new technology as well. The concept of a home phone and cable TV to me is just, why would you spend any kind of money on that at all?
It's a comfort. It's that generation of people. My parents, my older aunts and uncles, they still get the paper every day. The landline, maybe not as much, but fax machine, you better believe it. At my parents' house.
Okay.
They use it.
So when I took over as CEO of IAS, one of the first things I did was I told Jerry, hey, why are people faxing? Why are you faxing things? Why are you even giving out our fax number? Just delete it. Just make this fax machine go away. No one uses these things anymore. Man, did she find somebody that used a fax that we had to keep it for, because it was her comfort. We had to keep the fax machine.
There's a lot to that.
Do we even have a fax machine now? I don't know.
I think there's a way to do it.
It's all email and stuff now. I don't know. But yes, it's that comfort. They're creatures of comfort.
Yeah. When you want an airplane, a lot of people, especially 50 plus, have newspapers, have the Wall Street Journal, have the local paper. People, to your point, like that feel. They just, there's something about it. It is. Besides going to be the market.
How else am I going to start my chimney, or for the grill? I mean, that's perfect.
There is something to be said for that I'm always looking for kindling to start like a bonfire or something at the house, and I never have it.
I will, every few years I will get the New York Times Sunday edition just because of that. And I'll stockpile. I'll get it for like 6 months. I love it, right? I read it, but then I'll have enough newspaper for the grill.
Yeah, when I lived downtown Peoria, I feel like by 2 generations I was the youngest person in this giant skyscraper, and so there were a lot of newspapers piled up in the lobby. And I always thought to myself, "Who reads the newspaper, man?" But I'm the first one to be really mad when I see an article on Facebook. I'll look to see what the source is, and I know it's a legit source because it's New York Times or the local newspaper. But I still won't click on it because it makes you pay for it. It's behind a paywall.
Yep.
And I'm like, I could find this news somewhere else for free. I don't want to do that.
Some of you can, some of you can't, right?
That's true, too.
The Post, the Journal, the Times, they all, I love, for crying out loud, his name just went on my head, last week tonight.
Yeah. Nope, I don't have it.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
That helps.
But anyways, yeah.
Anyhow, comedian, it's on HBO, and he was talking about newspapers and online media.
Oh, Mar.
No,
is it Mar?
That's not Mar. It'll come to me like tomorrow, and I'll text it to you. But he's like, online news is a lot like porn. Somebody spent a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears, in a basement somewhere, cranking this sucker out. It's good. You just got to pay for it sometimes.
Yeah, or just hit the free sites.
Hit the free sites.
Newspapers, Pat. Talking about newspapers. I mean, Google and Yahoo and everything, and Fox and all the big national brands, they've got their free apps with their free news. But I don't get my local news. No. And it's still, we talk about radio a lot. We've had some of the local radio guys on the podcast. There's still a huge, heavy market in radio. Mm-hmm. I listen to it religiously. I listen to podcasts a lot when I'm traveling. And I even have Sirius XM radio, which to me is somewhat antiquated, even still. But I do a lot of traveling between radio zones, and sometimes, in the Midwest, we still have dead spots with cellular internet. 100%. So I can't do my podcast all the time. So it's the only reason I keep my satellite radio. But
does the podcast world go anywhere?
I think
because if we would ask a radio station in 2002, what's going to happen? Radio will be here forever.
It will be.
It definitely will be. But the point I was getting at was I still listen to the local radio station and the local talk guys a lot because I want that local news.
Well, that's part of your history, though, too.
Well,
you were in the industry.
But there's one bridge I cross every day to get to work, and I always tune in at the very least to see if I have to take the other bridge to get to work, right, because of traffic. And I want to know what the local weather's going to be. Even though I get it on my phone, I want to hear what the local news is, what's happening around town. Yeah. And you don't really get that with a lot of the local news apps or sites.
That's
And
fair.
you don't get that on Fox, and you don't get that on CNN.
No,
So I think that's going to be around for a long time, and it ultimately will be here for a very long time.
You look at your career path, how you were in broadcasting, then in the AV world, and then merging the two together to create your next path. This is kind of the reason we started this podcast. I was in a different line of work for 13 years, now AV for 3. A lot of my previous work, there was a lot of this involved with it, with, interviews and things like that. And I thought, as I'm learning this new craft, how great would that be to kind of share with other people that are maybe having a career transition in their 30s? It's a scary jump. Mine wasn't as scary as yours because you were off on an island on your own. Mine's a 2-week, pay that's there. But it's one of those things, and it's nice to have you on here to kind of hear that story and just to see a success like that. It's nice.
And from what I understand, what you get paid to do this podcast is very similar to what you got paid to play in the minors. Which
was
is
really
darn near nothing.
Wow.
Because we don't get paid to do this.
That's impressive.
Yeah, maybe Cassie will throw some money.
Baseball money. You're saying
baseball. Minor league baseball money.
No,
even in the majors.
It's how you market it, Caldera. Baseball money.
All right, baseball money.
It took 8 years to get off of that minor league minimum. So
moving to the majors, I'm sure you get you're still up there, but it's not cheater money or who's the other guy that we were talking about?
Ohtani, $700 million last week.
$700 million last week.
Oh yeah,
which is crazy. You're not making that doing podcasting. At least if you are,
says you
have not picked me up in your jet recently.
It's because we don't fly to Peoria. It's flyover country.
I was trying to get. Actually, I'm going to have one of our other mutual friends on, and I was like, "Hey, man, just stop the plane in Peoria on your way up to Chicago and stop by and do the podcast." So we'll see. We'll see if we can get him on. But yeah, good times.
He would be a hoot.
He's already said he'll do it.
Okay,
I just need to find the time to get him to do it. So
make sure he puts a shirt on.
He's got stories for days, like everybody else that we know.
I did a podcast with him once without a shirt on.
Did you really?
He didn't have a shirt on. I had a shirt on.
I did a podcast with him for you.
Yeah.
We did one together at Infocom.
Okay,
it was a good time.
Shirtless
that was actually,
podcasting is the next.
It was not shirtless. At the Infocom one that I did. I did not see that one.
It was on audio only, and I got to enjoy him shirtless, and I'm saying enjoy in a very.
I was telling the story. This is our mutual friend who, he owns MTX Audio is one of the brands that he owns. Yes. I was telling Tim the story at lunch that I had put in my stepdaughter's car some subs that were my subs from high school just because I had them and I thought it was cool and she needed to have them even though she doesn't care. But totally pimped out the car and John immediately was like, I would have sent you all the newest stuff. You just got to call me. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that conversation. So, So Tim and I'm glad we both got dressed up today.
Yes.
I didn't get the memo.
But you have a branded shirt on.
Well,
yeah.
See, the beauty of it is Tim and I know each other so well that he knew that I had a funeral today, which means he knew I was going to be in a suit, which means he knew he was going to have to wear a jacket because he knew I'd be in a suit.
Next time we do this, I'll wear my 3.
Very nice.
Okay. Historically, we've been at every AV executive conference together and whatever over the past 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. And we are always one-upping each other or trying to one-up each other to the point where I'm very disappointed because he did not wear, we have matching socks.
I did not.
And he forgot to wear them today.
I did think about it, and I'm like, no. And
that go with the suit.
And I didn't see his shoes, but his son over here in the background has some phenomenal shoes on.
I didn't. I have the same shoes. I wore those yesterday.
He has better shoes than me.
He's got some good shoe game over there.
We're obsessed with Jordans. Him and I are obsessed with Jordans.
That's Christian. He just got a new pair this week. Dunks.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Nice. Well, awesome. Tim, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely do.
You are genuinely my podcast mentor. I will say that because I've been on your podcast numerous times and it has inspired me to want to do this. And Pat has kind of pushed it that little bit further for us to do this together. So we appreciate you being on here, sir.
Thanks for paving the way.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been great. So thank you.